I didn't see any per diem coming for this meeting.
Oh, I thought you were taking the family out to
Oh,
dinner.
no,
Yeah.
no, just me.
Okay.
Okay, everybody happy with the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
assume
just
the
have one
agenda.
or two items that, it'll come later, but just a slight adjustment to the schedule.
Yeah, it's on the back page, I think. Oh, is it new? They don't have this?
She'll make the schedule this
I
way.
just added one item, I had added the Islands Trust that's being talked about, the Islands Trust requisition. I thought I'd add it to the May Finance Committee
Sure.
for discussion, so.
All right, second thing is we had some minutes of the meeting, whatever that date is, January the 31st. Errors or omissions?
They were so
concerns?
short, I couldn't really find anything to complain about.
You like short.
And if Allison, if
Oh,
you vote by Allison,
All right, I accept that as a mover and a
Except
seconder.
I'm
done
down
deal.
as partial attendance, and you never showed me at what time I arrived at the meeting, so.
Yeah, I think you were in and out,
All
that's
right,
why.
any public
Oh, I
comments?
just went out to answer a phone call, so that's not really partial attendance.
Chair?
Because I think,
All right, no public comments. Development fees. Daniel, you got the floor. Or who's got the floor?
Yeah, Daniel's got it.
Daniel's got the floor.
Thank you, Steve. And
I'm gonna assume we've all read this, Daniel, so hit the high points and a little
Okay.
bit of strategy or whatever you wanna call it.
Sure. So the planning department has done a review of our planning fees. So we have a guiding policy in the municipality for planning and budgeting decision making. And number 8 addresses fees and charges. So it talks about that reviewed on a regular basis, which we haven't been doing with the development fees. Review will include analysis of costs and what is charged by other municipalities. It says we'll review them annually, which we haven't done, and then it will be set using these guidelines. So fees for development-related functions, i.e. building and other related inspections, development approvals, subdivisions, will be set at levels to recover full costs. So the current bylaw, you've seen it in the appendix, is our bylaw number 11, adopted in 2000. I've noted here the bylaw is lengthy and hard to follow. It breaks applications into 3 different categories, so it has a basic, a regular, and a complex fee for each of the applications, based on a variety of factors that go into it. And so to our staff's knowledge, we've only ever used the regular category fee. We've never actually used the different functions. It also has this very lengthy formula for how to refund application fees, and it's quite, quite involved. So we're seeking to create an entirely new fee bylaw that reflects, one, the increased costs to process applications, but is also simpler and more manageable bylaw. So one of the first things we did analysis of comparable communities for across sort of the typical development application fees, and although some of them vary, so like development permits, different communities will have different categories of development permits, so they'll be arranged depending on their application type. And so what we picked are sort of comparable Islands Trust and nearby, so see Sheldon, Gibson's, and Lions Bay, trying to pick smaller communities, so we compare ourselves to West Van.
Hey, the column on the right, is that, it says year adopted,
Yeah.
is that the last time they updated the fee?
Yes.
Holy smokes, so somebody like Seashell hasn't updated since 1998?
So
they make us look good,
We're
don't they?
since 2000, so we don't have a whole lot of.
We can't call the kettle black.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, all right.
yeah.
You know what it could also be, Steve, and correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong, Daniel, is they may not have rescinded this
Yeah.
bylaw here, and they've got them included in their fees and
I mean,
charges
it's
bylaw.
possible the
So
Seashell
the
one.
fees may have been
Yeah.
updated, but,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, because
I
I
tried
can't
to-
see this being done, because what a lot of municipalities started out with was a ton of different bylaws with fees in them.
Yeah.
And then they did a consolidated fees and charges bylaw, where the fees and charges are
Yeah.
all in the fees and charges bylaw.
Okay.
So they
So the
may
right-hand
not
column may
rescind.
be very misleading.
Yeah, got it.
All right,
I mean, for the
Sorry,
most part, I
Trevor.
think I tried to capture that, but so it's just the Seashell one seems like that outlier that maybe they,
yeah, it was
yeah, I can
and
check that again.
they look comparable to everybody else, it seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
it's
I
okay.
wondered about that.
Yeah. So for some fees were sort of middle of the pack. You can see like rezoning no CPs were sort of comparable-ish. Yeah, and again, even with sort of DDPs, or the variance fees, subdivision fees were lower, and especially development permits were
Does
lower.
anybody have any specific questions about the proposed fees themselves? I'm not trying to short circuit
Sure.
anything, but I'd rather go through all the numbers. If
Yeah.
some number that jumped off the
Sure.
page that somebody's unhappy with, why don't we kind of Barb now, or whatever you want to do.
So on your report, Daniel, you've got, the very last line above policy framing. You're saying you're seeking to update bylaw number 2011. You're actually replacing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then to reflect increased staff and hard costs or direct costs?
I was using the hard cost to be like costs that we pay out. So in this case, it's development permits to register on title. We pay a notary to register the permit
Okay.
itself.
But and we pay for advertising in the newspaper and all that
Yeah.
stuff? So, and your direct time?
Yeah.
Okay, so, why aren't we charging the applicant for requiring them to register? And they just have to deliver us a,
Right.
and why aren't, because it's in their benefit to register the DPs and the DVPs, not ours. And and the other advertising costs and posting the sign at the top of the road and all that stuff.
Yeah, so there's a couple. So registering on title, I believe the municipality has to do it because it's noticed that municipality has a permit.
No, it's a notice that the municipality's issued a permit.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't we just require us, like
Yeah.
sometimes with covenants, 219 covenants,
Yeah.
we require a statutory, whatever the term is from the lawyer, I think it's statutory
Okay.
declaration,
Yeah.
that they will register it once fourth
Yeah.
reading's been. So I don't see why we would register the covenant in that case, and why we wouldn't do the same with development permits.
We charge them for it, don't we?
Or we could
We-
register
we-
it
we
and
do
then
not
charge
charge
them
them.
for
Yeah, we're
it.
charging for it anyway, don't we?
No, we don't.
$113?
No.
Oh, is it? I thought I read that somewhere.
No,
113
we are
costs us
charged
to register it, so we eat that
$113
as part of the fee.
If
You know,
we were,
there's not much left in the fee for us after
No.
that.
Oh, it's not an add-on, it's buried in the fee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and what I was gonna point out was if we were gonna charge them, we have to include it in a fees bylaw, otherwise we can't charge it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm
Okay.
getting at, I guess, is there's, with rezonings and stuff, even the simple ones, I thought new policy is to
Yeah.
require them to post a notice.
Yeah, so the
Stuff like
requirement
that,
for us to
so-
notice, after I finish the fee schedule, on my list is to do a procedure bylaw, which is currently an Islands Trust one, and the procedure bylaw,
Approval bylaw,
yeah, can include in that requirement to post a sign on
Yeah.
site.
Yeah.
Can I just back up a little
Yeah.
macro thing
Yeah.
here? Did I read somewhere, 2 pages over somewhere, that the total revenue we got from all these fees last year was $16,650?
Yeah.
This is a pimple.
Yeah, so even the
Now
increase
put
is
your
gonna,
development hat on.
that going
No.
forward, we're talking about the increase, maybe we're gonna get another $1,700 in revenue
Yeah.
if the fees repeat themselves,
Yeah,
because we're
so-
looking at about a
I'm
10%
gonna
increase
think
in
way out of
fees,
the
right?
box here, okay? I'm over
So-
here, I mean, let's just get closer to the door before I say this, and I haven't got my developer hat on. But we wanna get housing going. We got a committee that's spinning their wheels, kind of thing. We've got a amenity bylaw that needs to be amended. If we were providing services to the community for housing, why don't we give a grace period? Anybody that builds a new dwelling, in the next 2 years, there's no fees.
Well,
I
somebody
mean, we're
that
not
builds
giving up a
this,
lot of money and heaven
Well,
forbid.
Somebody
if you
that's-
do that, what you're doing is you're asking the taxpayers to pay for that, right? So if you tell them there's no
Yeah, but the
fees.
builders are, I mean,
No, but there's a
the new
difference between a
homeowner's gonna
building-
pay for it. I mean, the
building
developer
permit.
doesn't pay this. This is
The
like
buil-
saying,
Steve, you're talking about building permits.
yeah,
That's a different ballgame. These are
do any of
rezoning.
these
No.
create housing units?
No, they create the zone that allows the housing unit.
Yeah, but they effectively create housing units.
But if it's affordable housing, we can waive the fee.
Can
We
you,
put, yes.
can you do it for any housing though?
Why
Who
would you
cares?
wanna do
Who
it for
cares if
somebody
it's-
who's building a $5 million house, because it's not gonna solve your affordable housing problem?
Well, I put a limit on, put it on multiple housing or something.
I mean, you could wait, I think we should be charging the fee, and if there's a social benefit to the housing project,
Yeah.
then we have
Does
the
council have the
ability to
authority to
waive
do
it.
that?
As long as we put that in, I think we have to maybe put it in the bylaw.
I'm okay, if we put that in a bylaw, that in cases where the council, in their opinion, feel there's a benefit based upon certain guidelines, a la, my next door neighbor's building a $5 million house, that's not a good idea, kind of thing. But if
That's
it's,
a building permit.
if
So
it's,
what we do now, so for example, both Birch and the health clinic came as part of their ask of council was to waive fees. And what I always say we should do instead is we should do a grant of the same amount
Yeah.
or something like that. And so it's perfectly fine, like if we had an affordable housing fund that was had money in it, people would essentially apply and say, I want a grant to
I would
match
say
my.
any kind of multiple housing.
Yeah, But
Who
we've
cares
got
if
the
it's
ability
affordable or
as
not?
council to say, well, waive the fee, but the technical booking of it, I think, is a grant
Yeah.
granted on one side to offset the fee.
Okay.
We can't, because it's in the bylaw, we can't waive the bylaw, but we can
Can we,
make them a grant.
And so I talked in the report,
I
some
totally
communities have that
understand what
built
you're
in.
saying,
They have something
Yeah.
built, one of the places I looked at had something that said there's lower fees for affordable housing. I say I think it's better instead where people just
Yeah,
ask,
yeah.
because, you know, we don't have that many, and rather than trying
I
to
think
fit the exact
the word
Yeah.
affordable is a bit of a joke, because we need multiple housing, period.
I mean, I like the idea of the grant, and part of it is too, like Robin came and asked for $20,000 for us, and we turned her down, but that's probably way more effective way to spend that money than just granting carte blanche to all developments, so.
No, and these are rezonings, which, and I think, I don't know what we did with the fees for Grafton, but there's a bunch of affordable housing
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so we have, I mean, assuming
Okay, so that was my
that
first.
council would come out of that with that kind of flexibility, I don't care what you call it, grants or
Yeah,
waiving or
okay. So,
extra hug.
I guess I was, I've got to read my handwriting, which you all know is impossible to do. So I covered my application should be. I just sort of looking in, I guess, some of the DPs, for example, like you're proposing, for a DP, $350, but you figure it costs you a minimum of $500 to process these things?
Mhm.
So why are we not charging 500?
I mean, that's when essentially I took it and thought, okay, what's a reasonable increase, like is doubling the fees?
Okay, so then I
Yeah.
wondered if there should be maybe a staged fee increase, so we
Right.
do something and
Yeah.
then 2 years from now, we do something else to bring it up.
Yeah.
And that was gonna be my question too, are we going to bump this up 2%, you know, or
Yeah.
are we doing that, or?
I mean, it's not
is it set?
built in, it's sort of set increase and then,
Yeah, I don't think most people do that. I
Yeah.
don't, there's not a cost of living annual increase anywhere that you're aware of, Raj?
To this, no, you will,
No.
what people do is they'll take into consideration what neighboring municipalities are charging, what the full cost
So
of
not like
providing the
salary and
service
wages,
is,
we don't
and
do
what
a
a
whole lot.
reasonable increase is
Yeah.
that is, that can be absorbed by
Yeah.
the person who receives the benefit of that service.
Because also theoretically, I think somewhere that we can't really charge a fee for, to be a revenue generator, it's to recover our costs.
Is that true?
yeah,
We can't?
yeah.
Yeah,
That's an actual,
yeah.
So we can't, what else?
You can't, we can't charge a building permit fee, a variance application fee, a business license fee to generate revenue that's
Revenue.
just gonna go into the general pot to spend on something else. It's to recover the costs of providing that service.
Okay, the other thing is too, I mean, part of Daniel's department, he's the revenue generator for us. Part of his job, I would think, is to get new assessment on board. I mean, we've got a challenge in that our budget is 3 times CPI, so we need more assessment.
Increase,
And I think that's
increase
part of
number of
Daniel's
lots.
responsibility to get new assessment on. So here we got a fee structure. And again, the developers don't pay these fees. The person that is, the homeowner pays them, or the renter pays them. It's just like corporate taxes, you know? There's a
Yeah.
difference between who remits them
and who-
versus who pays them. You know, that's my only comment. So as long as council's got flexibility, that if they want a certain housing project to waive them, then give or take $100, it makes no difference to me.
Okay, so with the rezonings and the OSB, I mean, there's also, I guess, the social argument, which I think you covered off in here, that if it costs us $5,000 to process it, is part of that cost really an overall taxpayer's cost, because what you're doing is ensuring that the island is
It's better
keeping
for the
its
community.
character and that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. If
So,
somebody built a 10-plex, it may be in the best interest of the
Yeah.
community, so maybe we should waive $500 to get it built.
yeah, or
Find
even,
out if that can make
even
a
to
difference,
somebody,
yeah.
you know, doing something of any kind.
Yeah.
But it, you know, I just, it didn't seem like enough for maybe the DPs and stuff to, because how many hours do you spend?
I didn't put it in the report, we did a,
Yeah,
and then some of it does come down to, you know, and I think I said that, like, I'm more certain on the DPs, because they're more, like, we do, you know, I think we did 20 last year DPs, and they're more
Yeah.
set, and the
And they pay
DEPs
for
and the-
all the QEPs and all that stuff?
Yeah, they pay
Yeah,
the stuff.
okay.
Whereas, the rezonings, I thought just there's much greater flexibility, so I'm more certain in the DP, like
Yeah.
a staff cost
And I
estimate.
imagine some of your time allocations are real stabs too. You know, if you're
Yeah,
using a
yeah.
standard cost, standard hourly rate and a number of hours,
Yeah.
Well,
I bet
hopefully
you
you're
those
keeping
three
time.
applications are the same.
You're
Yeah, and to
keeping-
a certain extent, I try to base it on like a good application. So, we get the ones where we basically have to handhold them through the whole process.
Yeah,
It takes
no
longer,
purpose
so I'm trying to say, okay, we get a full application.
We used to do a lot more cost recovery
Yeah.
things, where the applicant basically paid for everything.
Well, and I'm just wondering why we're not doing that, and I understand your,
Because it was a much bigger line item of revenue than this
Than
16.
this,
I thought the 16,000 was so low. I mean,
But it seems, it's almost nothing, so even,
Yeah, I think it's probably more in 2017, because we had more rezonings, and last year we had less rezonings.
but that's,
and a lot of
60,000 was only
developers.
4 rezonings, if that was all.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah.
And I meant to do the math of saying, okay, what would it have been in the new, with these fees, what would it have been?
I mean, I just think if somebody, let's say, subdivides their lot into 2, I mean, that's a huge windfall for them, right? So,
It's a huge, but we get extra tax revenue too,
Yeah, I-
because we've created two lots. The sum of the
Yeah.
parts is always more than the whole.
Yeah,
but then, 5 versus
which we
4 is-
desperately need.
Well, that's another debate, because a lot of people do not want to see that. Because that was the big argument from one of the guys in Salt Spring. I don't want to see it as a municipality, because municipalities want to increase the number of lots in order to raise the money, their
Yeah.
tax base to raise the money to
Yeah.
pay for all their goodies.
So
So that was a negative for him,
Yeah.
for being a
So
municipality.
they're happy to pay 3 times CPI
Well, they're not
for
paying.
rent increase, for a tax increase.
Well, they're not. paying.
Anyway, let's get back to where we were.
Okay.
Daniel, anything key you want to tell us here in addition to what we've already picked away at?
No, I think that's all I put forward, the other pieces.
Why would
So is there a couple, I just heard a couple of suggestions go by that maybe, is it feeling a couple of these are a little low? There's-
Well, I guess, I was thinking the DP might be low, but the other side of it is, if we make it too high, they're just gonna go ahead and do the work, and
Yeah.
they're in the watershed. So maybe we need to be.
And
And
some
we are-
some of the
we
Are you
doubling
coming to
the
sit in
DP.
on our meeting?
Just for a second.
Oh,
He's the
okay.
public, sorry, sir, we already asked the public if there's any comments.
Yeah,
You missed
no
public
comments for
comment.
me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Allison.
Well, no, so maybe, 350 is fine. But maybe we should recommend that in 2 years they be looked at again, just to keep, which I think we had in our policies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they should be looked at annually, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's a good idea, because I do think I like the idea of going through a cost recovery eventually, and then if there are hardships or we want to throw bones to people, they can go through, a granted process.
And I think that's gonna be the rare case, I'm guessing, Ralph,
That,
Yeah.
to waive them or grant them.
Exactly.
I think that's a
Yeah.
rare,
yeah,
that's gonna be once every 2 year kind of
yeah.
shtick.
Okay, so my only other question is more on the policy side. But how much time do you end up spending with somebody before they actually put the application in and write the check?
It varies hugely, so we get, especially DPs, we get some DPs that just people submit and they come versus some people, I know me or Emma or Sarah will have met with 5 or 6 times before they submit.
Yeah, so I don't know whether there's some way to keep
Yeah.
a lid on that.
Yeah,
And just say, look, we'll give you half an hour, but,
Yeah.
otherwise you can go and, here's a list of people you could
yeah.
go contact. Yeah. Okay, other than that, I'm okay.
Okay.
So
We have a resolution on
Well, the
this thing, so-
recommendation Diana provided was that the committee recommend the council rescind development fees bylaw number 11/2000 and replace it with the new development fees bylaw as presented to the finance advisory.
So you put the missing words in there when you read that out. Recommend that council rescind and replace it.
What page on there?
I just right here.
I just said that.
What's it on?
But you filled them in, but they
Anyways.
weren't there in the writing.
I did replace that. Daniel doesn't use articles and I
No,
reword him with articles.
I had a boss before who would take them all out.
Yeah. And then, did you want to, I have did you want to provide comments, like about annual fee, looking
I
at or?
heard at least one
possibility to
thing for
provide
sure, when
comments?
we put in there, and it's recommended the fee structure be reviewed annually.
Yeah.
So it's like that, you can smooth those words over,
Okay.
Steph, but
Yeah,
Well, that we observe our policy and follow our policy and review the fees.
that's a good idea, observing the
Since we
policy.
wrote the policy, remember? Yeah,
sorry, what's the policy, Ellen?
yeah. Oh, you didn't help write the policy, that was.
That's probably, well, it won't be saying,
It's the.
yeah, it's recommended that we do adhere to the policy.
Well, is it already in the policy?
Yes, it's already in
So
the
we don't need to
policy.
say
We don't
it.
say
Well, I think we just
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
provide a gentle nudge to keep up with the policy.
And is it in the policy, Daniel, that if council so wished, they could grant or waive?
No,
You don't have to specify that, council
No.
can grant,
They
I
can
mean,
grant or
council
waive
can
their own
waive
stuff?
any bylaw, yeah.
Okay, all right.
can we waive bylaws or fees?
Well, fees that are in a bylaw is what I meant, sorry,
Yeah, by doing the.
So they can do that by
By-
council
by
resolution.
council
Yeah,
resolution,
so we give them a
yes.
grant that covers all.
All right,
the
after
fees.
wandering around the room, it looks like the wording we're okay with as written. Is that what I'm saying?
Oh, okay,
Steph, you okay there?
sure.
Never mind all that other buzz that went by, it's irrelevant.
Okay,
All right, based upon that, just note that, so that's what you're gonna send out to the other people that, as
okay.
resolution number one, we're asking them to say nay or yea on.
Yeah.
Okay, Daniel, any other words of wisdom there?
No, thank you.
I love that, you got 50 pages of stuff here. and-
Yeah, good, this is all you, good,
This is all-
okay, I love that, all right. I was a bit worried when I got this package.
Daniel, thanks for all the work.
See you later.
You don't wanna stay for the financial plan?
Are you for your budget? Well, we say you only get half, you know.
Rob, can you do me a favor and just pass me the bill? Thank you.
Now we have our esteemed guest with us from the public. We're now on item 2A, am I? 4.2?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the five-year financial plan. I've got basically what I've incorporated into the five-year financial plan schedule that I handed you, or sent out via email, is the information that's included in the draft five-year financial plan booklet.
With some machinations, because the numbers
Pardon?
don't, they don't all tie.
I sent you an email
I know, I just
on that, so they do tie in. I mean, I made a couple of changes, which I'll go over in the presentation as well. But, so that's essentially the Schedule A is a consolidated five-year financial plan that brings all revenues and expenditures together in one document. And basically, what's included in that document, I'm just gonna go over a little bit of information. So when we're talking about the municipal budget, we're talking about just the municipality's budget. So in terms of the tax bill that goes out to our taxpayers, it's 59% of the tax bill that they pay. The other 41% is taxes that we collect on behalf of other taxing authorities. We have no say in what those taxes are. They requisition us, we collect on behalf, and we remit to those taxing authorities.
Raj, is that something on people's tax bill that we explain to them, or we don't?
I believe we explained it in the
Well, we
budget open
explained it,
house,
yeah.
and we.
There's a
and
stuffer.
I believe there is a, yeah,
Okay.
statement in on the tax
Good,
bill as
yeah,
well.
That's good.
I mean, there's separate lines on the tax bill as
Yeah.
well as the stuffer.
There's, yeah,
Yeah.
Good.
so each one of those is spelled out separately.
Trouble is, people only look at the number at the bottom of the
I know.
page.
But so apart from us, the lion's share of what we collect is for provincial school taxes. This slide here is just to put some context in terms of the services we provide and how much is spent on those services. What I've done in this little pie chart over here is, for this year, broken out waste and recycling. It used to be included in our, we called it Public Works. So I've kind of, essentially most of what that department does is roads and infrastructure, so that's what I'm calling them here.
Yeah.
And waste and recycling is a service that I think people need to acknowledge.
think-
Pardon?
Is our contract signed?
That contract
I know we
is,
is bouncing for a while.
yeah, actually, I'll tie the loose end up. We haven't, I mean, Louise has agreed to it
Okay,
in principle,
so it's
but
all
I don't
done
have
except the
yeah,
paperwork. is
we'll
that
get
right?
a, pardon?
It's all done but the paperwork.
Except for the paperwork, yes,
Got it, okay.
she's billing based on that contract, and she's good with
Sending
it
that
as well. yes.
I got it.
And Raj, all the waters, all that is user pay outside?
Yeah, the
Yes.
water and utilities are all user pay.
Okay.
And so again, the lines, and general government includes essentially finance, corporate services, council, and our strategic planning areas, so,
So you put so in the budget book,
yes.
you've got a line in the detail here that's got council strategic initiatives, which is 131.4. So is
In this
that all gone into,
into the general government
General
over here,
government?
yes.
And you're separating out planning from the general government?
well, that's not,
Yeah.
general government's us.
So planning and development is shown
Yeah.
separately, so that's about
Yeah.
590K that we spend on a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So just going over these really quick. So in terms of our 2019 financial plan and drivers, essentially our operating costs go up by 162,000, and the lion's share of that is labor. Also included in that is contractual obligations. So, for example, things we pay to the IT company, other contractual obligations that we have to receive the services that we do in-house. And that represents essentially a 3.2% tax increase, 162,000.
I should read somewhere in the media, the provincial government just recently announced we're gonna cover the municipality's employer health tax. Am I wrong in that?
I haven't seen that.
I
I
haven't
read
seen that. That would
I
be-
read their press releases every night.
I'll
Yeah, so they were
look for
getting some
that.
pressure about this is really a tax on the people as opposed to this employer tax propaganda they've been putting out. But I thought they came out with a proposal that the munis are gonna be kept whole. No?
I haven't heard anything or received any
UBCM has been
notification.
asking that the munis be kept whole.
Yeah,
And the UBCM was just, the UBCM board was just, at the end of February, was in Victoria,
yeah,
and they would have been reiterating that ask.
yeah.
But I didn't see
Yeah, I
anything
put
in
this
the,
in a paper just
I
about a week
didn't
ago.
see it in
Okay,
the
I'll-
provincial budget
I'll
either.
leave
so-
that in limbo.
Okay. So the other driving factors of the increase in this year's tax rates are the community plans, debt servicing, which we require another $76,000
So it's
to service.
76 on top of the 30 we were already paying
Yes,
for
so it's about
interest.
$105,000 a year roughly. And then our asset renewal and replacement policy calls for 1.5% increase so that we're basically for renewal and replacement of our assets. Anything that we collect for asset renewal and replacement goes into our asset reserves, and that's what funds our capital works. And then our employer health tax imposes an ongoing increase of about $25,000 in comparison to today. And we do have a one-time increase in 2019. We'll fund that from surplus because that's not an ongoing year after year increase. They're almost double dipping in 2019 for the employer health tax. And so what I've done here is the ongoing impact is about 25,000. Our actual impact this year is about 55,000, so we're taking about 30,000 from surplus, rough and dirty. So we're looking at a overall property tax impact of 6.7% in order to balance the budget. An additional $338,000 in comparison to what we had last year in taxation revenue.
So what was the non-market increase in our assessment roll?
It was about $40-something thousand. It was about $45,000.
$45,000 is all our
In
assessment
terms
roll
of
went up?
no, I don't remember that number off heart. I can give that to you offline. It represented about $45,000
Okay,
in
So
taxation
So
dollars.
that's a 1% saving. I mean, the new
That's built
non-market.
into the 6.7% increase, yes. so
So,
it's
so
net.
really, it's only 5.7 that the existing taxpayers are paying, because we're getting 1% from the
From
non-market.
normal, you could look at it
Yeah,
that way, yes.
okay, well, that's,
Okay.
And the staff under operating, the main positions for that are?
It's an overall increase of about 2.2% to
Across the
staff
whole.
positions
Okay,
across the board, which is indexed with CPI.
okay.
And then there are a couple of positions that were severely undervalued, and there was an adjustment made to those
And
compensation
there was
levels.
some new positions, right? In this staffing, we went up a .9 FTE.
In 2019, I don't think we're proposing
Well-
any new
Well, you've got
FTE.
this chart.
I think there, yeah, I'll have to go, I'll refer back to it, Shale, I think there's a note down at the bottom explaining the .9 that I believe it was miscounted last year. I'll have to go back and take a look at the note, Allison, but we
It
have,
doesn't say.
I
it.
don't think we
It says increase
proposed-
in 29 represents a restructuring within the service areas.
yeah. I
So-
can get back to you on the details, but
Yeah,
we
I-
have not included any new FTEs, so in terms of the .5, I will,
Well, it's .9,
yeah.
yeah.
okay. I think there, I know there was a miscounting in last year's book, but I'll get a clear explanation to you on that as well. In terms of, so in addition to the 6.7% over here, our garbage parcel tax will also go up. It's treated similar to utilities, but we charge a parcel tax to owners. The parcel tax for 2018 was $298 with a new one-year contract. That will jump to $424, so it's an increase of $126 per household.
We charge that on vacant lots.
Yes, it gets charged
So
on
it's all
vacant lots
parcels.
as well. It's
There's
straight.
the odd lot that gets exempted because there's no way the garbage truck could get to them because they're water access only.
Right, right.
So in terms of a resident, what kind of impact, I mean, that's essentially the bottom line, how does that impact me? So the average assessed home on Bowen Island is assessed at $1,144,000. They paid $2,553 in municipal and parcel taxes before any increases. The waste and recycling parcel tax will go up by 126, and then I've broken it out into the cost driver component, so the increase in operating cost represents a $73 increase to each household. The renewal and the replacement policy represents a $34 increase, and the $76,000 increase in the long-term debt servicing cost represents a $34 increase in the employer health tax and $11. So we're looking at an increase of about $278 overall to the average household. If your assessed value is higher, then your tax rate will be higher than $278.
Are you going to give this PowerPoint to council? Or,
I will provide it to council as well.
because I'm just thinking it would be nice so that somebody can say, okay, my property tax is it's 2.2, my assessed value, so my taxes are gonna go up by double
So
whatever
there
those
is
scores
a
are.
chart like that in the
Yeah.
one-pager executive summary that gives, so people could gauge what their tax increase would be around.
But
Based
those
on-
numbers are the same, but I just
Yeah.
thought, this is the most recent one. Is it possible to just have an extra little column there that shows the total of those to the 152, just so people could do that?
I think this does that, Allison.
Are you handing that out again with the?
I can, it's a one-pager, it's,
Yeah.
I'll hand that out to council.
I think
Yeah.
the bigger problem is that most people would not understand that second line down. They would not
Yeah.
understand, most people think that if my assessment went up, then automatically my taxes are gonna go up. They don't appreciate the key thing is it's a change my
Yeah.
pro rata share
Yeah.
of the total
exactly.
assessment. That's the more
Yeah.
meaningful thing. If the whole market goes up, it's irrelevant.
I don't know how many
Yeah.
times we've told people that though.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I'll double
Gets
check my
that.
messaging, I think I included that messaging in the one-pager as well. And that was key, I've taken that slide out of here, but for those people, if anybody had attended the budget open house,
Yeah,
I have a video on that,
good.
and I
Well, this
have,
slide effectively does it if they listen. to
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
no, I've got the city of Surrey has put out a really good 3-minute video that explains that,
Good.
and they show 3 households, so I did have that as part of my
And
explanation
is it
for the
linked on
budget
the
open house.
website?
Pardon?
It's linked on the website. I
My
know
my
we-
budget presentations are not on the website.
No, but maybe we should
We
put
could.
that link to that. I
Yeah.
think we did
Yeah.
last year.
We did last year, and we
So
could
that-
do that again, but it
Yeah.
clearly states that assessed values don't reflect yeah, a change, don't
Yeah, just
imply
because your
you're
assessed value
raising
went up
taxes,
50%
yeah.
doesn't mean your taxes are gonna go up 50%.
Okay,
So I think one of the big messages, we think, because it's 10% basically from the
Yeah.
278, right, is really sort of that waste recycling, which is a big component of that. It's almost, it's almost half of that. And just making sure we're letting people know how we're gonna have to deal with
Yeah.
that, which, yeah. Are we moving forward with all those, so we've signed the contract, but we talked about things like, looking at a sticker system, that kind of stuff. Where do we leave
Yeah.
that at? Is that left with the committee?
Yeah, we shouldn't let those thoughts die. There's two,
Yeah.
three ideas.
Well, that's what yeah.
Is the other committee, what do you call it, the waste committee, what do they call it? Are they,
Climate action and environment or something, or?
yeah, whatever you call it, are they following up?
We're
I
supposed
mean, we
to-
should pin the tail on somebody to make sure those things
Yeah.
get followed up,
Yeah.
whoever that is.
The Environment and Climate Action Committee?
With-
Or is that garbage depots?
Well, no, but it's keeping the volume, like, I'm worried about greenhouse gases, and the more truckloads she takes off, the more greenhouse gases,
Okay.
all that stuff,
So
plus
also-
the
So
cost.
essentially,
That
I had
processor
talked-
thing also,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's gonna get a 3-year payback or something, or other. I
Yeah,
mean,
so we just need to
we need
keep
somebody
that
to,
Yeah.
Yeah,
keep lighting a fire under this tater.
but there's a big difference with that processing process, because you've got to go for tender in August. So you've got to figure out, because if Louise designs it and works with the committee,
Yeah.
then you going for tender, you've got an issue of she's got proprietary insider knowledge
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
other bidders won't have, so
Yeah, true.
we gotta think about.
So you're
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
sooner rather than later, that's what you're saying?
No, I'm saying it can't be the committee working with her, it's gotta be the
Yeah,
committee
yeah.
on their own,
True, I agree with that.
designing, rather, so we don't have a proprietary
Yeah,
knowledge.
this
issue
Rob's got a good
for
point, though.
bidding.
We should say which committee or who
I
is
thought we kind of
doing
tied the
something.
can to that committee.
I can mention it to the chair.
It's David, right? Is that David's?
The chair is now, just like, I just had an election.
We can look at the
Will
strategic
has
plan.
the,
The strategic plan has, I think,
Okay.
council champions for different
Would
things.
you do that stuff then, just so we don't lose that?
okay.
Okay.
Everyone okay with that?
Are we
Yeah.
done with
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah, we just need to make
Okay.
sure. My only concern was that everybody would do like Rob just did and say, oh, that's a 10% increase,
Yeah.
and that's 278, but my assessed value is 2,200, to 2.2 million, so that means I'm gonna pay 5.
So in
Yes.
terms of, if
Yeah.
you're at 2 point, I mean,
Well, the parcel tax will
Essentially-
show separately, won't it, on the bill?
Yeah, but
here's-
it doesn't here. People are just
so
looking
Allison,
at
if you were
278.
2.2
Yeah,
million.
no, I see that, and that's why
Yeah.
I'm saying this needs to be added to the,
Okay,
whatever
we can
goes
add
on.
this slide
Yeah.
to the presentation,
Yeah.
here's an idea, that's
Yeah.
easy enough to do.
yeah.
I can do that for council presentation. Okay, so I'll add this slide that shows the various assessed values so people can see.
And the other way to
This
clear
is
it
a
is to
comment we
put a
can
bracket
call me
around the 73 to the 11.
I'm
and-
surprised that the
come up
average
with
is
that
that high,
What?
114.
It seems high.
You know,
I was.
I know we got some big, houses
I
on
know,
here.
I was
but mean,
surprised.
Well, a few big ones at the top, will throw it at.
I know, that's what I mean, I know we got some of them taters, but wow.
Yeah.
I bet you that tater's down next year, by the way.
Well, how
Yeah.
many are, is it easy
Everything's
to,
softening in the city big time.
yeah, is it easy to tell how many are above and below that average?
I can do that, but
Well,
my
what the median is-
calculation, it kind of puts your calculations for your tax rates and everything out of sync if you start using the median. But I can
No, I wasn't
tell.
asking for the median, I was just wanting to know if the average value.
Oh, the number of homes that are above and below, I can.
That's average, not
Yeah.
median,
Yeah.
so what's median?
Pardon? I don't know what the median is right now, I
And-
didn't calculate
and
that,
it
it's
would
not
be-
too far off from the average, I
Yeah,
would
that's what I
say.
thought, but it would be interesting to know.
How many are above the
Because-
average and how many are below?
Because there's an item in the local government stats about, number of homeowner grants claimed.
Yeah.
And we have a small number of homeowner grants claimed, which to me means we've got very
You're over the average,
few
yeah.
that are below that.
Yeah.
Most of them are hanging around the average and above,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
I'll
Have
look
many
into that.
people- I know we asked this question, are there many people that take the
300 homeowner
provincial
grants claimed?
tax
No,
waiver?
but maybe because they're secondary.
Do we get a lot of those?
Oh,
But those
like
are-
deferred tax
Yeah,
Yeah,
deferrals,
the
you
deferred
mean?
tax thing, whatever I should call that thing.
The tax defer,
Defer-
we get the money from the province.
I know, but I just
Yeah.
wonder, is that a big propensity on the island?
I don't think it's,
I don't know.
We do get tax deferrals, I can't remember off the top of my
It's
head
an
what
unfair
percentage,
question.
but I can.
There's two schools of thought on tax deferrals. There's the old school that I never owe any money for anything, like my mother-in-law,
Yeah,
who should have been deferring because she didn't have a lot of cash flow.
yeah.
Or there's the school of thought, like all my richest clients, that it's cheap money and
Yeah.
I'm gonna use the
Yep.
money for something else.
Yep.
I was kind of thinking about that. Never mind.
Okay.
Moving ahead on a higher level of intellectual discussion.
Again, this slide just repeats what I've said earlier, it's just highlighting what the cost drivers of the expenditures are. And so the debt servicing, contractual increases, a CPI-based compensation adjustment to staff, the asset renewal policy, and the solid waste and recycling contract.
If
And
you're presenting this, I would use that last point, and that's why we got, that dollar amount, that's why we gotta do something about it. You're gonna see some changes coming at you. We don't know what they're gonna be, but to have a $250,000 increase, whatever that number was 2 slides ago, I mean, and that's gonna keep coming at us, I just got a hunch.
It's-
This
yeah.
recycling's
So
gonna get more
something's
and more
gotta-
expensive,
exactly.
something's gotta happen here, folks, so look out.
okay.
Yeah, because the asset renewal and replacement policy is sort of a one-off. Once we've done the policy, then that isn't going to continue. But this solid waste it's new this year.
Yeah.
Maybe you put the bracket 126, you know.
And people are gonna wanna see what can we do to reduce
They
our
wanna
our
hear we're
tax
doing
load.
something,
There's
right,
a
Rob,
copy
yeah.
of one.
I think I've done that in an earlier slide here, I was just kind of, again, repeating
Yeah.
over here.
Okay.
And
Or maybe
then,
you put volumes are increasing or something, just to tweak people.
Okay.
so that's basically it for operating. I'm gonna jump to our capital program. So essentially, we're looking at about $7.8 million in capital in 2019. Large part of that is in facilities. We have the community center and the fire hall, which is spread out throughout 2019 and 20 and 21. We've also I'll go through the details for 2019, but in utilities, in those 2 years, 2019 and 20, we've got the water treatment plant. And in the transportation infrastructure, you notice the numbers are quite high in 2019 and 20. 2019, we have 3 major culverts, Mount Gardner and 2 others that, they've got the Miller Creek culvert that we were gonna do last year, but we're carrying forward to this year. We have 3 culverts that we have to replace this year. They're at risk of failure if we have another major storm. So they're included, and they have to also be done during the fisheries window, which I believe is fisheries window in June or August?
It's August.
June or August, so they'll all 3 will be done in a very short period of
There's a
time.
problem with the bridge over by the IPS.
Wait a minute.
That is included in 2000 and, what the problem is with that?
Yeah, no, I think I know what the problem is, but is that in the budget to get
It's
fixed?
in the 2020 budget, it's
Okay.
not proposed in 2019.
Okay.
And
So-
we've got a list of those. Those numbers will
Yeah.
all tie into this great big.
They do tie in, so if you take a look at that 7834700,
Yeah.
that number ties into the capital number on the 5-year financial
Not this
plan.
thing.
Not to that, right now, that needs to be adjusted. What I've done is, from when I handed this out and the requests that staff made, I've taken 2 big projects out. I've taken the replacement of the fire truck, which was $550,000.
And deferred
And
year.
I will put it into 2020, I haven't yet, I've taken it out of 2019, and my rationale there is the new fire chief that will be a priority for the new fire chief to address strategies
I like that idea.
for replacing that.
Yeah.
And I've taken out, there was a provision for, I think, either $50,000 or $75,000 for security of the works yard over on
Fence.
Salal.
Yeah.
So I've taken that out as well. I've talked to Bob about it and said, can we put that off until next year and talk about priorities? So I've taken those 2 projects out.
But you're not putting a signal in that we're getting a fire truck in 2020.
So I will put that into, I'll put it into 2020. Well, it depends on what the new fire chief says. I mean, maybe we don't have to replace it in the next 5 years. I'm hopeful
Well, the
that we
fire
can take one of our
underwriter survey is
existing
told us
fire
we have to
trucks
replace
and
it.
designate it as our main pumper. Like I know the chief had told me, Rob had asked at the last council meeting, we have I believe a tanker truck but it only carries 2 people. And I very quickly answered to Rob, because response I had gotten, that no, you can't designate that as your bumper truck because it only carries 2 people. And Rob asked the question, well, why couldn't you have the other 4 go in a pickup truck behind that? And
We'll have to
so,
buy another pickup truck.
pardon?
We'll have to buy another.
It's a lot cheaper to buy another pickup truck than it is. So I think a strategy of the new fire chief would be to see how, I mean, if we've got good operating equipment that meets our needs, but we're having to replace it because of FUS requirements, how can we get around that? I mean, again, my first thought was, when the chief had put the $530,000 fire truck in, why are we putting that in? Because the rating for the community will go, the fire rating for the community will go up. So I said, so, well, if the fire rating from the community go up, then everybody's insurance costs go up by, in my inside thinking was thinking, if everybody's insurance costs go up by about $75, who cares? That saves us spending $500,000 on a truck. He was like, everybody's insurance would probably go up by about $800 a household, not $75. That's a different story. So,
Well, at least you're doing that math.
so you're looking at those options in consideration. But it
It's
is
a bit of a
$500,000 that I think
us.
we can either, I would like to put, if we do have to spend it, let's put it off until our reserves have built up to be able to sustain it in a better way. But let's look at other strategies, if we can come up with another strategy rather than spending the $500,000. If the new fire chief says we do have to replace it, we can always come back to council with a special report. I think the expenditure is significant enough that it would warrant a separate report to council on it.
So whose insurance is due first?
So I mean, we do have to look at it in 2019, Allison, to your point, whose insurance is due first, right? We can't risk the insurance costs going up if that's what's gonna happen. So the next few slides here are just a detail of everything that's included in 2019 within each, I think you've seen this before as well. The only thing that's changed is I may have had some transportation items that were included in facilities, so I fine-tuned it. If it's a facilities item, it's included in facilities. So
So that
again,
500
our big
correct?
expenditures in facilities are, I anticipate about $500,000 spending on the fire hall in this year.
So
And the
what
remainder-
timeline has Johnson Davidson got? We wouldn't be breaking ground and doing site prep before in September on their timeline?
We may be, I don't anticipate our 2019 costs being more than 500. I can shift it around if it needs to be shifted when we do the amendment. I've got a total budget of 2.7 million for the fire hall,
Why
I know.
not 3 million?
because we had approved borrowing up to 3
Yeah,
million,
we
and
had
I'll past
300,000
communications,
in the pot.
I believe council had approved 2.7, so, and we had indicated to Johnston and Davidson 2.7.
Okay.
So when we did the RFP, so I don't want to come out with a $3 million budget.
Okay, but that
When
answers
we-
one of my questions.
Okay.
I was trying to
I believe
make
the
it happen,
RFP had
didn't
said
it?
2.7, and so this is in line with the RFP.
Okay.
Otherwise, it just, if you say, oh, we got a budget of 3, then chances are you're gonna get RFPs in that neighborhood, so. And again, we've got
And
a
Raj, they
remaining,
know-
sorry.
Raj, they know there's a contingency like like we did with the community center, 15%, right? Like that's,
In the fire hall,
yeah,
There's contingencies in the number,
yeah.
yeah.
okay, as
Yeah.
long as it's that, yeah.
So-
But-
Okay.
They're starting,
Okay.
there'll be a different process.
So, jumping over the community center redesign, we've got a remaining budget of 418,000, which has already been approved by council. Anything that's got 2018s was approved by council in 2018 and wasn't completed. Project work had started in 2018. If there were any projects that were approved in 2018 and didn't start, then I had removed them, and people asked for that budget again so that it could be prioritized in context with the current year's requests. So either a commitment had been made to a vendor, or works had already started on
And
some of
the
these.
Cross Island Pathway on there,
That would be in the transportation
Okay,
area,
right.
so we've got $1,094,000 in facilities costs, Almost all of those will come from our reserves. I don't see any of these being funded by any grant funds. Transportation, the ones that have a star beside them have significant grant funding available to them. So the Cardina Road roundabout and sidewalk, we've got about $225,000 of grant funding to the total expenditure of $475. Roads and resurfacing, we've got $450,000 for our road resurfacing program. I forgot to bring the email with me, but Bob will be doing a report to council, and I do have a list of roads that are and lengths of the roads that are
And a longer term
yeah, that are
report, not
going
just
to be
the current year.
that are priority for 2019.
But not a 5-year out.
He's got a 5-year as well, so that, I think that will be the council report. I had just asked him for the 2019 plan. So, that being said, we've got the culvert replacements again. Mount Gardner, got 2 culverts there. It's gonna cost us about $350,000 to replace them. The Miller Road culvert, we're carrying forward $214,000 funding. I believe the total budget for that was, in that neighborhood, sorry. It might have been 225 actually, so he's spent about 11,000 of it in the current year just on securing materials. And then I've grouped a whole bunch of smaller projects together that amount to $70,000. Some of them were 2018 approved, others are new this year, but sorry about the bolding, unbolding, that doesn't mean anything, it's just a formatting issue on the slide. Again, we've got incomplete works from 2018 of 17,300, which is essentially the school, there's no school travel plan in here, I've taken it out because it's a plan, and I need to do a little cleanup. It's just the, I believe the solar panels for the bike barn and a multi-use path, phase 1. So we've got about $1.9 million in infrastructure projects in the 2019 plan. And then in the heavy duty and equipment, the fire truck was requested, but I've taken it out of 2019, so I just kind of crossed it through for reference. And we are, however, required to replace engine 32 with an anticipated cost of $100,000. And the plow salt truck, we've committed, I mean, it was approved in 2018, it's in Langley, I believe. Last I heard, there was just something being outfitted on it, so it should be to us soon.
Geez, that thing got a built-in swimming pool? Yeah, 47,000.
Not a cheap piece of equipment, is it?
And those little attachments to works wanted, like the scrubber and all that kind of stuff, is that in that? Or is
No,
that
I've got them over here in
Okay.
equipment. So that, I've kind of separated our equipment into major, large pieces of equipment and then regular. So here are the 3 attachments. Here we're looking at a skid steer, broom, bucket, and shoulder attachment. And so all with different price tags, but totaling $130,000. I believe the broom and bucket are absolutely required. The broom is used to sweep the streets. Bucket is used to move materials around. The shoulder attachment allows us to grade the side of the shoulder, but it will introduce efficiencies and probably has a less than 2-year payback. Right now we rely on contractors and their timing to be able to do shouldering. So this will allow us to do it at our schedule and not have to line it up with when they're here. And then last year there was basically my being new, the fire chief, communications issue, him not realizing he had to request. He didn't do any replacement of fire gear. So basically he had his gear is inspected and rated and by independent parties. And so he needs to replace turnout gear, which is essentially what the fire truck guys wear. He needs to replace some hoses, and the SCBA is the breathing apparatus that they have. So that's that needs to be replaced as well. And then we're looking at ITS renewal and replacement. That's not all, that's just a program where we're looking at about nine ITS units being replaced in 2019. So approximately 1/3 of our IT computers and stuff. Just regular turnover as computers are at risk of dying and being outdated. And
Just a really dumb question, but there's no provincial program to help small communities subsidize their fire departments?
no, nothing like that. Not for asset renewal.
Cause you got $100,000 in equipment there, which is almost the
Yeah.
and then we're not even talking the trucks, it's,
But some of that may or may not have to happen, it all depends. I mean, if they have a major fire and some of that turnout gear gets damaged, then they've gotta be able to replace it.
Yeah, no, I totally get the
And,
turnout here.
Yeah, and the same with the
It's
fire
kind of
hose.
strange though, you think about it, we get subsidy for police, but we don't get subsidy for fire.
Well, the province used to pay 100% of our policing, and now they only pay for half. We pay for half on our property taxes.
You raise a good point, and we should make it a subject of a subsequent meeting. And we get subsidy for police
Yeah.
while we are a community of under 5,000 residents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we become a community of over 5,000 residents, that subsidy will disappear.
Yeah.
Chances are, I don't know how that small communities grant works, but I believe that would go down as well. If I'm not and if that does, we would kind of have a double whammy, so we should have a discussion on that at a subsequent
That small
finance.
So it
community
does
one
sound
is a
kinda
head
different
count
though.
one,
I
I
mean,
don't
you're-
think so.
They wanna protect us for police, but they don't wanna protect us for fire, when you think about it.
Yeah, no, they
There's
don't.
something a little
yeah.
goofy there, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
sorry.
ambulance is like that too, I think, on the 5,000 people, right?
No, ambulance is provided everywhere by BC
And
Ambulance.
there's no 5,000, okay.
No.
Right.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Great.
Okay, so essentially library capital requests total about 40,000. 23 of that is for the renewal of their book collection, and then they've got a $15,000 request for annex furnishings for the new building there. The equipment is like $1,000, and IT is I think a $2,800 provision for annual replacement of IT, that computers and stuff. Essentially, couple of requests for, we received those electric charging vehicle stations for free through BC Hydro, so this would be the cost of well, I shouldn't say for free, we received a grant to acquire the electric
So
charging
you got a
stations, we have them
$15,000
now.
grant in revenue.
So yes,
Now, you had electric charging vehicle stations in that bundle that included the bike barn.
I should have removed them, I took them out of
Did they
transportation, I
change
need to
the
remove them from the description.
They changed the billing, can we now charge for the chargers?
Is this
Is
description?
that for municipal vehicles or public? Maybe I should ask that question.
This would be for public, I believe it would be for anybody can
Are
go
we allowed
and
to
charge their
charge now?
vehicle
Before
there.
we weren't. Are we allowed to charge? Like in the States,
What's
you do it by
the-
credit card.
I haven't seen any being charged. I
It used
checked,
to be
I don't-
illegal because nobody else could sell hydro, and that was the
I checked
little.
out Gibson's the other day, and theirs is free.
West Vancouver's is free,
West-
people
the one
charge
with the
there.
I think that's by
Stuff.
provincial
But
regulation.
we could charge for the parking spot.
Yeah.
That's something I should look into.
In
Steph.
the US, you lock in, you put
What's
your
that?
credit card in, and
To look
just
into
like
whether we
filling
can
up your
charge
gas
for
card, you did.
Yeah.
electric charging vehicle stations. I'll look into it.
They put a big ass parking meter there.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the one we were looking at had
Yeah.
the capability to do that, so that's something
Okay.
down the road that would be good
Yeah.
to know, because there were three different styles you can get. And I'm pretty sure we could charge, at least if my memory serves me correctly from
We should.
the BIMTAC meeting.
Anyway.
Okay, I'll look
a
into
year and a
that.
half ago.
Okay,
Anyway,
sorry.
Okay.
Chop traffic again.
So again, all those items total $337,000.
Now, Raj, you keep saying I forgot to take that out. Have I got this as a hard copy somewhere? Because none of these numbers aren't matching what was in.
I've
the
updated, Allison, I just sent you that booklet, that was, sorry,
Is
the
the new
budget
numbers
book
in
was
the email
older.
you sent out yesterday?
No, the
I-
budget book you sent out.
I'll send my PowerPoint out to you
Okay.
guys.
The PowerPoint has just been included into a revised agenda?
Okay, so I'll get that out to you, so you've got the revised number, and I'll correct the descriptions where I had moved stuff around, so that.
sorry, Raj,
ties in.
really quickly,
Yeah.
sorry, the firefighter turnout gear and all that, is that like 10 of them, or is that like for every single volunteer person has their own
It's
gear?
for the damaged ones.
So it's for the I have not gotten down to that level of detail, Rob, the fire, I've just gotten a budget amount,
Okay.
And the details may, 10 does ring a bell, so you guys had received a package that had the descriptions and the risk of not replacing
Yeah,
them.
well, that's what
So
I
if you
was-
go to that package and look there, all the details will be there, that's all the detail that I have as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
So, and then in terms of water and sewer, the big project is a Cove Bay treatment plant. Essentially, as the sewer, there's $200,000 of, a $200,000 project on the sewer lift
So the
station.
36,
And
the 3.6 is only part of it, it's a 2-year.
It's
Yeah.
I've got $2 million in
Next
another year, so it's a $5.7 million project, the Cove Bay treatment plant.
And all of that's fee for service directly to the users, right?
Well, remember, this is capital, so capital is funded from reserves, so up
From
the
the
Cove Bay
Cove Bay water
treatment,
reserve.
2/3 of it is coming from a grant,
Okay.
and 1/3 is coming from essentially reserves, but our reserves are short a little bit. Last year, when I did the plan, I had thought that Grafton Lake was gonna generate $110,000 a lot. No, there were 110 lots. Each lot was going to generate $10,000. I was going to receive $1 million for Grafton Lake, but as it turns out, that's going to come in over 20 years. It's going to be a phased approach, so we might only get revenue for about 10 lots this year. So I might have $100,000 this year. So what I'm going to do is look into borrowing the municipal portion, simply because we've got, and I'll come back to council for that request.
You say borrow, not accounting borrowing, real live borrowing.
Real live
Real
borrowing.
live borrowing,
Okay.
but that borrowing would have to be funded by the Cove Bay water users, not tax rates.
Okay.
And if it's small enough,
So,
we may not have to go
yeah,
for a
so that's something I've got to
for a
look at
referendum.
next week.
And there's another section in there that says that if the Vancouver Coastal Health told us to do it, we don't even have to go.
Yeah, that's, I was looking at that
Yeah.
section as well, so.
Right.
And it would be a temporary borrow. What I would suggest, and my thinking around would be, is if basically when we receive those $10,000 contributions for Grafton Bay as that comes on board,
Yep.
it should be used to pay down the debt, because it's just, we're using debt to finance money that's
Yeah.
otherwise gonna come in. Essentially, other things that are included in the 5-year financial plan is $6.7 million of long-term debt, essentially $4 million for the community center and $2.7 million for the fire hall, and all of the debt servicing costs associated with that. I've also incorporated the operating impacts of the new community center, so the new rental revenue streams that are anticipated, any rental costs that will go down in the year, they'll go down as we move the municipal hall over there. So all of those,
That's assuming we get the full 7.3 grant. or
It's up
whatever
to
it is.
8 now.
close to 8 million, yes.
Close to 8. And what's the timing when we find out if that's going out?
We're going to find,
December.
yeah, sorry?
December is what I heard
Oh,
yesterday.
So after the election?
Yeah,
Yes.
after the federal election, which
Got it.
doesn't make sense to me, but anyway.
There was a
Yeah.
recent communication put on our website
That's bad politics.
where basically we had thought we had to go to the public, or to the electoral,
Yeah.
for approval before the grant announcement came
Remember
out,
that.
and so we were planning a referendum in
Yeah.
May. And the provincial government has indicated that we do not have to go for electoral approval until they've confirmed whether we're successful or not.
That makes
So
more sense.
that makes a
They
lot
might
more
get a lot
sense.
fired up
Yeah.
for borrowing money.
Yeah,
And then we find out we don't get the grant.
yeah,
I mean, that's a lot of buzz for nothing.
exactly.
Yeah,
So-
and you've got a much better chance of
Of
having a
getting
positive if you can say
Yeah.
we've got the grant.
Absolutely.
All you
Yeah.
have to do is.
So
do
we
this
won't be
step.
going to referendum in May. We'll be holding off until, holding off electoral.
Ross, should we good to know the date of when that grant comes in, because
We don't know. We
Oh,
won't
we
know.
won't
They've
know.
indicated to us
Entirely
it's gonna
sure.
be December, and
Geez, the election's in October, you'd think.
the election's October 21st, the writ will be,
Spelling Monday at the same
the
time.
writ will be dropped by the middle of September, so I would have thought they would have announced in August.
I would either.
But, and we've never ever found out on a grant announcement except, you know, maybe 2 days before they phone you to do the photo op.
Yeah.
So we won't know.
You already
So
missed
the
it.
only other debt we'd have, Raj, is gonna be the $2 million we currently have?
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanna figure out where we're gonna be debt-wise, assuming all those ducks lined up, the 8 million in this plus the 2 million, so we'd be 8.7 in debt if everything goes swimmingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do have on the, that's a later item in our agenda, but I will go, what I've got for a subsequent finance committee meeting is to go over all of our debt
Sure.
and the impacts of,
Okay.
of the various components of debt.
Yeah.
But,
I would just say the one thing we need to, like you mentioned, operating costs for the community center, there's gonna be an increase in operating costs for that new fire hall too, so wherever
Well,
that's
not
coming in.
much.
Well, if you do Haiti Bays, it's gonna be a lot more, but anyway, I just think we need to keep that.
keep that in mind, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got
Now, as soon as
even
we're
days now, it
aware
just goes up
of,
and down.
as we get further in the process, Rob, we should have better information to be able to anticipate
Okay.
that, so we'll incorporate that.
Yeah, all right.
The only other thing I was going to mention was in the 5-year financial plan that I've given you, there's gonna be a minor difference between what goes to council and what I sent out to you, and that is I had something rolling up into transfers. It was just a miscategorization of about $65,000 from transfer to other utility funds to the transfers from asset and statutory reserves. So the number that you see in the 5-year financial plan for 2019, the $2,102,575, I know, Allison, you're looking at it.
No, I'm not looking at the 2 million anywhere.
Oh, so if you go down to transfers from reserves,
I've got to asset reserves,
from statutory asset reserves,
yeah, 2,102,676.
yeah, that number should be 2,183,975.
2,183,975.
And if you go down to the transfers to reserves,
Yeah, which one?
to other utility funds
Yeah.
reserves, that number should be 191,200.
Okay.
And so, and then the capital expenditures number should be 7,850,700.
Okay.
And so there's about an $81,000 difference in the revenues and expenses, it's just my things were not rolling up to the right
Okay.
line
And
item.
the property tax levy is a little bit less than what you had in the package in here.
It's probably just the breakout, so if, I know you had sent me an email and I
Yeah.
replied to your email, so if you can, I wasn't sure
Well, you've
online,
got
if we
a,
can clarify that, we can take that offline and I can answer that.
well, you've got a line on here, in the budget package you sent out, or the one that, oh, quiet.
It's probably just,
You've got property, yeah. This
it's
one
probably,
here,
yeah, it's showing, what is that showing on it?
5,441,300 for property taxes,
Okay.
and 950,400 for personal taxes, but then the water ones have been added to that, so.
I can go through that with you and I can reply.
Well, you've
I
got
can-
a lesser number, I guess, yeah, so I was hoping there was some sort of reconciliation between what was in here and what was in here.
Essentially, those numbers do tie in, they're prepared from the same source data.
Yeah,
So basically that number is, maybe that schedule there has changed. We can go over that online if you want to, go over the
Well, I guess
specific nitty-gritty numbers, so.
well, I'm used to seeing when
Yeah.
you see one document and says this is what the cost is going to be, and then the next one comes along, there's usually a reconciliation between the two. But that's as to what the difference
Just
is.
get more slides, Raj.
Okay.
That's
keep
my
going,
last
that's
slide.
fine, yeah.
Okay.
And the operating impacts of the new community center, I thought you told us yesterday that you got those in the carry-out years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
That's
Rob
what I
was
said.
asking, it was gonna be more when they were included, but they're in here.
They're in there.
They're in the years, I guess, 2021 and out.
Screwing my page here. Is there a resolution
For the fire,
regarding
sorry.
the 5-year?
For the
Not for the
community
fire.
The
center.
community center, I know,
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and the fire hall we've sort of discussed and felt wouldn't be much different, other than the depreciation, and depreciation and
It's not
amortization
included
isn't
in
in here,
here.
so because that's not something we tax for.
Okay, well, we can.
That the Finance Advisory Committee recommend the council read bylaw number 483, 2019, cited as that bylaw, first, second, and third time.
Okay, well, yeah, I will.
Okay, so we comfortable with that again?
So we'll have to
We'll have it
ratify.
the same way, we'll send
When
out
I
a
get my
resolution.
reconciliation.
Yeah, so Steph quotes that us three support, and at the meeting, then we'll ask if the 3 non-attendees to vote as they see fit to vote, but in favor would be appreciated.
Okay.
So leading the witness.
And you're gonna send that out, Raj? Or no, Steph, you're gonna
Steph will
send
send
it
it
out?
out.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll look at it.
Well, I assume you're gonna revise the schedule
Oh.
before it goes to council.
Pardon?
There's gonna be different numbers on this.
Yeah, there'll be slightly different numbers, but nothing material, I mean, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, where
Oh,
are we
the
at
only
here?
other thing I wanted to, before we get on, sorry,
Go ahead.
before we jump off that topic, I did include a couple of correspondence that I received on the, to the budget, and just leave them for you guys to look through.
Yeah, I could understand the one
That's her
gentleman's
bone
math
she's
when he got
chewing
to
under there,
11%, but I won't bother with it. Sorry?
What's she chewing under there?
Oh, she's on her, little plastic thing, you could hear her,
Oh, I can hear the plumbing, so I thought, aha, what is she doing?
so.
As the next item, I like the idea of sending out the prospect for future meetings, that's our gung-ho idea, by the
Oh.
way.
I should have done that to begin with,
Yeah.
to begin
And those
with.
meetings,
Sorry
the
about
dates
that.
that are there, as soon as I find the right page
I don't
here.
have, yeah.
They're
So
okay
actually,
by
this
me.
is
they
probably
don't-
something that's gonna need to be voted on by email as well, because.
Is that something you're handing out to us now, or did you
Yeah,
have
it's
it
on
out
the back
already?
sheet
No, it's
somewhere.
on
There we
page-
go. 91, page 91.
Yeah, so,
Oh,
because the people who aren't here,
I took it apart because I only had written all the wrong stuff.
Why don't you make that a second email, Steph? By the way, at the meeting, these dates were reviewed.
Well,
If anybody's got any problem, holler.
well, let's find the dates, I've lost that piece.
so it's Wednesday, May 8th, Wednesday, September 11th, did you pick that?
I think that might be, Islands Trust.
Treasure.
Have you checked these to the Islands Trust Council?
Oh, I will look
I
at
did not look at Islands Trust at all, so.
the website.
That just strikes me as,
Steph, did you make those 4 o'clock, or?
I will make those 4 o'clock,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So May 8th, we have, public, no, sorry, let's see. Islands Trust Executive Committee.
It is?
As on
Of course.
oh, that's all right, it's the executive committee, that's Sue Ellen, not,
Michael?
no, Trust Council. When is the Islands Trust Council?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Are you on
No,
their
well,
their
I
website?
hope you found that helpful.
No, I don't forget our website.
No, we'll go to the Islands Trust website.
Okay.
hardcore, you can say that on meetings.
Your
you don't have to
sarcasm
say
in
that.
his
Impressed.
So, folks, we're
Sorry.
thinking, once we get the date sorted, everybody's happy with 4 o'clock? Well, that works better
No,
for
I
you.
much prefer the morning.
Yeah. 4 is great for me, because then I don't have to take the
Yeah,
whole day
you come on
off,
out.
right? Otherwise, I'm gonna take a whole holiday, so.
I'm better in the morning too, but I'm okay. 4 o'clock, if that accommodates people, I'm cool.
Well, I'll do it with reluctance, let's put it that way.
I appreciate it.
Now, let me find my calendar.
Okay, May 8th, Executive Committee, we already did that. Okay, September 11th. I think that, we've got these on our calendar though, Counselor.
Well, have you got Trust Council on your calendar?
Yes.
And where is it then?
Oh, I don't know when it is, but I know it's not on these dates. Because the council calendar is.
I thought you were looking at our calendar.
I was, but it's just a bunch of blobs on
Because-
tiny little thumbnails, so I have to open them all up to find.
Oh, well, I'll just look at their September.
But here's the council,
Just a minute.
Islands Council. And I'm not seeing.
No, it's the
conflict.
17th, 18th, 19th.
Yeah.
So that's fine, because they're here ongoing, that's why.
Okay.
You can come.
Right?
You can come and make a comment in the delegation period about your value for money.
So, I was just gonna say,
okay.
committee members, if you have any recommendations for other items you'd like to see on the schedule, just
All right, those dates work for me.
This is page 91. Oh, okay, I got it, good.
So one of the things that we added in, actually, that was revised,
Yeah.
Rob, earlier was on the May 8th meeting. I've added a topic, Islands Trust Requisition. So, hot topic being discussed, so the Finance Committee might want to weigh in on that.
And, well, and it's very timely that we weigh in on that for that time, because the trust council will be here on
Okay.
the 17th, the following week,
Following week,
yeah.
okay.
Is the auditor gonna be ready for May the 8th?
I've got to get back to them, they should be, timing is similar to last year, they've asked me when we've
Yeah.
set the date, so I wanted to make sure it was okay
I like
with the
that
committee
idea.
before,
Yeah.
so.
And do we need to have a pre-audit committee meeting with them?
We didn't last year, do you guys normally have a pre-audit? They did send me, and I should have printed.
We've done it by telephone conference
Oh,
call in
on
the
tele-
past.
okay. They did
Yeah.
send me what do they call
Is there
that
something-
package, the
Audit
engagement
planning?
pack, the
The
audit
audit
planning,
planning
and
report?
I can distribute that by,
Yeah.
can I distribute that by email to
That's
the
a good
committee?
idea.
Yeah,
okay.
that would be
Yeah,
good.
And if
technically,
there's
we
anything-
probably have
okay.
that ahead of time.
Yeah, I'll send that out to you guys tomorrow.
And, yeah, I
To do
don't,
the audit package, did you say?
the
The audit
pre-planning.
planning.
Audit plan.
Audit plan.
Audit engagement is actually, they sent me an audit engagement letter, which includes the plan.
Yeah, so we don't need the engagement letter, we just need the plan.
Okay.
I think there's might be
It's only
a.
3 meetings, you're gonna get a
That's
big
not-
per diem out of this.
Well, no.
What big per diem? Doesn't the chair have to buy us a drink afterwards? Yeah, if it's at 4 o'clock, yeah. Okay, and the reserve balances, you had something in a package
I
we
do
got
have
for
a
the
proposed,
strategic
yeah.
planning. Has it changed much?
It won't, no, not significantly, just a few things, slightly, but that's, again, it hasn't been shared with the finance committee, so I'd like the finance committee just to give them an update on what our reserve balances are and what our projected reserve balances are.
Okay. What did I do?
Oh, good. Anything else, other items, folks?
I've lost the agenda now.
Steph, are you okay with your,
We're
I was
good.
gonna call them marching orders, but that sounds too official.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have to leave? Marching orders?
No, no.
No?
The Light vote left already.
Okay, yeah, I'll send these,
And there wasn't anything
Well,
earth-shattering in any of the correspondence that we got for anybody, I don't think so.
yesterday I was
So Steph,
working,
you'll send out the meeting notices, so we can just go click, 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 and it goes in our, right?
yeah, I'll confirm with the other members first,
Okay.
because if none of them can make it, we don't have quorum for the
Okay.
year, so.
Yeah,
And then I'll do the meeting.
Yeah, and you'll send the vote email out
And the
tomorrow.
voting email.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good folks.
Good.
so yesterday I was
Thanks, everybody's
working, pardon?
Thanks for everybody's time. Yeah.
Thank you, thank
So
you.
do you mind if I do that tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow's good.
Okay.
Take the rest of the day off.
Jeez, you're such a.
I'm taking, I'm taking food to a sick person.
Oh, violins.
Yesterday I was
By the way, we should say, I know you don't have a lot of staff here too, but thanks for your effort getting all this stuff pulled together. Right?
Thank you.
And I mentioned to Sophie too, I was really impressed by the layout and the easiness to read.
Oh, the
And
booklet was
the
great.
booklet was really good. Because I looked at some other municipalities and it was a gong show, so it looks
Yes.
really good, yeah.
Thank you.
It looks really good. People actually read it, which is great, so.
I think if you put too much in, then people tend to gloss over it.
Exactly.
If it's an 80-page book or something like
It's-
that,
then you might
it's
as well
just
throw it in
stuff
the
that,
trash.
yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So we're talking about timing and ferry. Yesterday I'm working away and I thought, oh, I was working like crazy on something. And I had a class I had to go and take an open water diving course.
Oh, God.
And
yeah.
so
I just
I was like, oh shit! I looked at the phone and I'm like, I missed the 4 o'clock ferry. I'm not gonna make it in time for my class, right? And then I looked down at my watch.
Oh, it's that.
Oh, these Bowen Island people, they didn't change the times on our
Yeah.
phones. It's 3:30. I got lots of time.